Hey guys, so on my previous video, I showed you how I spawn an actor using a trigger box. In this video, I'll show how to continuously spawn this actor using a timer so that when the actor remains inside the trigger box, the spawning event just keeps going and it only stops if the actor exits the trigger box. So this is how it's going to function. So the actor will overlap the trigger box. This will generate an overlapping event. The onActor begin overlap delegate function will listen to this event and it will broadcast its own event to a custom callback function that I will create. I'm just going to call it my own begin overlap. And when this function gets called, it will assign the value true to a Boolean variable that I'll call trigger. So when begin play occurs, it will start our timer. And this timer will call our second callback function, spawn actor. And spawn actor will know if the Boolean variable is true or not. So if it is true, then it will call our spawner blueprint in our world, and this will call our spawn actor blueprint and our actor to spawn blueprint, and this will generate the actor in our world. So as a first step, what we need to do is to set these Boolean trigger and our custom begin overlap and end overlap functions. So this is how we're going to do it. Okay, so I'm inside my spawner header file. So I need a Boolean variable. I'll call it trigger, and I will initialize as false. And I also need two custom overlapping functions to call. I will need you function to expose them to my blueprint, just like I did with spawn actor. And I also need to pass these parameters here because they will be called by a onBegin overlap function. I need one for an overlap. Okay, so I need to implement these functions here. Function. Okay, so what's going to happen is that when begin overlap gets called, I assign true to my trigger Boolean. And when this gets called, I just assign false. Okay, so as a second step, I need to set a trigger action function to trigger on begin overlap and on end overlap. Okay, so going back there, I just need to create a by trigger action. So when this gets called, I'll actually use my TriggerBox variable to trigger on begin overlap and on end overlap, except that this time on actor begin overlap will be calling my custom callback function, my begin overlap. And when on end overlap happens, which is when the actor exits trigger box, it will call my other custom callback function, my and overlap. And then this, oops, on actor and overlap. And trigger action will be called from the gameplay. Let me just reorder this function so that it just shows up here, respecting the logical steps. Not that this is really required, but it just helps me to organize the code. Okay, so as a third step, we need to set a timer and call spawn actor from it. Okay, so first we need to create a timer manager variable. I had already included a timer manager here on my header file, but what we need this time is a f timer manager variable. We're just going to call it my timer. And I am here on the gameplay. I will then start a timer using get world timer manager set timer. Um, then I need to pass my timer variable, this as the object that is being calling from. I will pass the address of my callback function, spawner. So then I will call trigger, no, I'll call it spawn actor. Yep. And then I have to pass the delta time, which is how many seconds this has to wait until it triggers the action again. And I'll just pass through because I want this to be looping, right? So since I'm calling here spawn actor from the timer manager, it does not require these parameters anymore because uh, what on actor begin overlap and what actor end overlap are calling are actually these two custom functions here. And spawn actor will just be a regular void function, so I don't need these parameters anymore. Okay, so when my timer begins, it will call spawn actor from here, right? So what I need to do actually is to then wrap um, get world spawn actor with an if statement that if trigger is true, then it will call this. Otherwise, it'll just do nothing. Okay, so I had already created my two Boolean variables here. Sorry, my Boolean trigger. And I'll also use my two location and rotation variables. So if trigger is true, then I will perform this. Okay, so let's save, compile. Okay, so actually this variable here should be a timer handle, not a timer manager. So that's why this is not working. But now it should work. So let's save, compile. Okay, so if we hit play, there we have it. Then it's spawning continuously. And when the actor exits your box, then it stops.